Okay, well, I am here with Tara, and Tara actually cut my hair, started cutting my hair a couple months ago, like 3 or 4 months ago now. And the first time I was in her chair, we just were chatting, and I was getting ready to go on the singles cruise, and she talked to me a little bit about how she had been divorced in the past and had dated, and through the course of the conversation, it came up that she'd been on. Am I right? Is it 43 first dates, Tara?
33.
Yeah, 33. Okay,
Yeah.
so 33 first dates. And I just found it pretty fascinating because when I talk to a lot of especially LDS people that date, it feels like we go about it different than that. We kind of go in and find somebody that's 70 or 80% of what we're looking for, and then we latch on to those people and try and make them into what we want instead of letting the natural cycle of going through different people and then trying to find one that fits our needs more, which is what it sounded like Tara did, right?
Mm.
So I just was kind of fascinated with it. I've asked her about it a lot, probably bugged her about it. But when we started reading this section of Real Love and Dating, I thought, hey, she's a great example of that. And she hasn't really read any Greg Bear or haven't even heard of him. She just kind of naturally found out about this. So maybe you could even just tell me like a little bit about like what it was like after you got divorced and how did you prepare yourself for dating, and then how did you come across, like, I mean, I don't know if it's normal for people to go on 33 first dates, or if before you found somebody. So you're in a committed relationship with Mark. Is that okay? So um and but I just am curious about how that process started. Do you want to tell me?
Yeah, yeah, it is fascinating after we had had our conversations about it and I was kind of reflecting on it all. It's like, yeah, I guess it is kind of, but I went through my own personal stages of self-reflection, and I think what really triggered it was the demise of my marriage, right? Started I stopped trying to make my partner happy because it wasn't working. And I started making myself happy and finding my joy. In the last 2 years of my marriage, I was really focused on that because I'm like very much a supporter of like attracts like. I believe in that 100%. But unfortunately, my working on myself and finding love in myself um it was the demise of my marriage. It was actually, I had the opposite effect on my partner, right? He saw that I wasn't giving him the effort anymore and that I was giving it to myself. So
Truly.
after 2 years of that struggle, I finally made the decision to leave and continued on my journey of finding my self-worth and knowing my worth and knowing that I love myself. And meditation was actually a big deal with that. Connecting with yourself, letting your subconscious actually guide you a little bit. I believe that's the Holy Spirit. That's your higher connectiveness is easier obtained through meditation. And that being said, I I could approach every situation with work and friendship and family and parenting with a clearer understanding of how I wanted to be, who I wanted to appear as, and, internally what was my true self. So, that was how I got out in the world. Like at first I was very introverted and I stayed home and I worked on me and eating clean and doing exercise regularly and just being healthy in general, and then deciding, okay, I'm going to go take a plant identification class and I'm going to start guitar lessons, and I'm going to go hang out with my friends and we're going to go to concerts and wine tasting. And I think that getting out there again, I wasn't meeting anyone organically. And then when I had finally come to terms with parenting alone 2 little boys is not necessarily a cup of tea, and it's not what we're designed to do as humans, right? um, you have a child with a man and a woman, and a man and a woman should be raising it, you know, and you have this, you're whole with someone else, with that companionship, you know, and it's just, it's so important, and not in a codependency sort of mental state. It's more of just a accepting the reality that you can't do it alone, and we're all in it together, and we're all connected. And then it was diving into journaling. I was really big into journaling. I still am. It's a form of prayer. It's a form of meditation, just like writing down all of your feelings, putting it all out there. It's my wish for myself. And the more I did the combination of like meditation and prayer and journaling and all of these things, the more I was sure on the person that I wanted to end up being with. And when I started doing the online dating, it's just like the perfect situation for narrowing it down. You know, you put it all out there, and I think as far as meeting people, you get a sense of who's really serious in their profile, and then again, one-on-one, like actually meeting the person in flesh.
Okay. So let me just back up a little bit, or maybe take a quick pause and ask you. And by the way, I didn't introduce Christy. In fact, we should change the name there. Well, this is recording, so it won't matter. This is on the recording. So Christy's going to help, just because she's had a lot of experience in dating as well. And it's always good to get both the man and the woman's perspective for stuff like this. So I'm asking her to just help out with asking you some questions. We're going to give you the Inquisition. But what I heard you say is two things. Number one, that you needed to work on yourself enough that you felt okay going out there. You just can't be a mess yourself, right? And then go out and dating. You have to, like, yoga, meditation, journaling, like, get your spiritual life in order first. I think that's a huge message that sometimes we skip over because we're anxious to be in a relationship or be happy. And, you know, most of the time new relationships make us happy, right?
Yeah.
If it works out. So that's one point that I heard you say. And then the other one that's interesting is that you tried doing it through local events, like, you know, whatever things had your interest, but you said it didn't work. But instead of just giving up and saying, oh, dating stinks, it's not for me, you did what? What, like, tell me again what you did.
Well, I'm just going online, dating online. First, I Googled best dating sites out there because I know nothing about it. I do know what other single friends are doing. And a popular one at the time was Tinder, but I've heard horror stories about it. And I wasn't really willing to accept that it was all bad. So I figured, okay, top rated sites, I'll go there. And then you set up your profile, and setting up your profile shouldn't take you 5 minutes, especially if you're doing it with intention. If you're really serious about it, it's not just a hookup, right? So I set it up. I spent at least an hour on it, but then I tweaked it, you know, because it's like a resume, right? Because this is something I'm serious about. And it's something that I want, and I want someone who is also genuine. So if I'm specific and if they actually read it, then, you know, they hopefully will take it seriously, and then that sort of evolves all on its own, right?
What were some of the tips that you would give to someone, or things that you did intentionally that helped to communicate to the people in an online arena that you were serious about finding someone, and it wasn't just about hooking up, or just, you know, it wasn't about just a temporary, I just want to have fun. You know, what were some things that, looking back, you can see now that made it intentional?
Okay. My intentions, gosh, half of it's hope, right? Because you just never know. And it's like, I think a lot of things that I had journaled of, like, what my perfect person is going to look like, I would I put in there kind of in a kidding way, but also in a serious way, because it's like, okay, your physical appearance isn't that important, but I'm going to put it out there just for fun, right? Like, I want him to be taller than me. I want to be able to wear 3-inch heels if I want to, you know? Um, but most of all, it was that I have a career and I'm really happy with my career and I've spent a lot of time in it. And because it's a small business, I'm not in a position to relocate. Because I'm a mom of 2 beautiful children, I'm not in a position to relocate. I expressed that I don't want to take care of someone, that I want a partnership. And I think that speaks volumes in itself. I remember I even had added, again, as silly as it might sound, I had added must have good hygiene or decent hygiene, right? And, you know, must shower daily, you know, brush your teeth, right? And someone had messaged me and had said, yeah, well, I shower every day, and yeah, I have a good working car, and then said something else, and then he was like, never mind, you're too picky for me. And I'm like, fair
Wow.
enough.
So on the photos that you would post, did you feel like you were trying to tell a story, or was it just that you would just have 4 or 5 pictures, or I'm not sure how many pictures you used, but how did you communicate the type of quality person that you wanted to bring into your life? Like, are there certain things that you would say to do or to not do when you're,
Right.
you know,
I
putting yourself out?
wanted to, I just, in a vain way, because I'm a hairdresser and I feel like being physically attracted to someone is the first thing, right?
Right.
You have to be attracted to someone to even carry on an interesting conversation and want to be in that conversation, right?
Right.
So I made sure to add a photo that shows my full body.
Okay.
I'm not super comfortable, you know, with how I look. I'm no model, but I'm in good enough shape and I'm active. So I had posted a picture of myself ice skating with my kids in the wintertime, right? And I really like going to a game, like going to see the Seahawks. I had a picture with me and a friend, and I put that in there. And, you know, just things that express who I am, but I'm not showing cleavage and I'm not, you know, displaying my kids out there per se, but to know that I am family oriented, right? And I think that that's the important thing, and to be taken seriously and to express that it's not a booty call that I'm interested in.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So, Tara, I have a quick question about like one thing that you told me that I don't know that you've said during this yet is just something about like you're busy and it just wasn't happening in the real world. And so going and doing online dating allowed you to schedule it and be really intentional about getting in a lot of dates. Like, how did you come across this? Because remember the first time we talked, I'm like, that's crazy. Like, you've done what Greg Baird teaches in his book, but you haven't even read the book. So how did you come across that idea?
So, yes, full-time hairdresser, right? Like I have my own business, so I'm working all of the hours that I can to maintain my financial comfort and to be able to support my kids that I have like week on, week off with their dad. So I have I have 1 week that is for me, and to keep my own integrity and self-respect, I need to maintain my structured days of like the weeks that I didn't have my children, I would get up and maintain, you know, eating a healthy breakfast, doing yoga, going for a run, walking my dog, and, you know, making time to have my me time, but then also going into work and working a full day, and getting plenty of sleep and maintaining mental I don't know, just my own personal truth. And I think that it's just super important to be able to do that. So scheduling, okay, my very first date, for example, I had scheduled a date, and this was where I had learned that you don't schedule a dinner with someone. You schedule a beverage. You have a drink and you see where it goes. Well, this particular person was coming from a distance, and I met him in between. And because it was the distance, I'm like, okay, dinner. As soon as I met him, within 2 minutes, like, just the interaction, the hug that he gave me, he was sweating, he was shaking, there was no confidence. I mean, nice guy, really sweet, but he wasn't mentally in a place to meet me, right? Like, that's what it says to me. Like,
So, but
I'm
you
in a
couldn't,
place where I'm interviewing him and he should be interviewing me as well.
so you couldn't figure that out though, just chatting with him, texting. You had to be in person for that.
That's
because
exactly right.
because this story, and I don't want me to interrupt your story if
No.
there's more, but this leads up to a couple questions. Number one, you told me about the first speed dating that you loved up in Seattle, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And what was fascinating to me about that is that you'd said, well, it because you were only with each guy for like 3 minutes, right?
Right.
And you said, well, that's all I need normally, not even in a regular speed dating, but just normally I just need 3 minutes. And that kind of shocked me to know, like, okay. And so I'd love you to talk about that a little bit, but more in also about what you just said about, this guy, is that I'm curious about, because Christy had said the same thing to me about weeding people out even before you get to the first date. Like, you can. So it's kind of funny because you say, yeah, 33 first dates, but if you include the speed dating, it's a lot more.
Sure.
And number two, I think that we should include people.
That's where you got the 43, because there were 10 people at the speed dating. That's
Okay,
where.
there we go. So, because I'm counting those, Tara, but you may not, but I do. In fact, I think that we should even count people that we chat with and talk to and eliminate, just because they're not, we know that moving it to the in-person, right? And not that we need to count like our first dates or whatever, but I'm just saying that we're still eliminating people, which is what Greg Bear teaches. And what I also found fascinating about your story is that it felt like you got to the idea organically that you just need to eliminate people. You need to, as quickly as possible, move through people and get to whether or not they're going to be viable long-term. Right?
Yes, I agree with that. Mm-hmm.
So I know that I just said a lot of stuff, but if you want to talk about the 3-minute thing, or if you want to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess to start with, it's meditation had prepared me for that, because spending that time internally, it gives you the opportunity to be in touch with your intuition, and knowing where I'm at internally gave me confidence in, actually going face to face and meeting somebody in person. So yeah, you can eliminate things just chatting and emailing somebody, looking at their pictures and reading what their bio is saying, and what they're representing and putting out there. But I mean, sometimes what they're writing isn't real, and so meeting in person is just critical part of it. Whatever you put on paper, it's telling me a story, and then when you come in person, you can really get in touch with your intuition on it. Meeting the first guy on the first date, like, yes, okay, so he's able to go the distance, and he's able to make a reservation for us at a very nice restaurant, and he's willing to pay for it. So that tells me he has a reliable vehicle. He is spontaneous. He can make a plan and follow through with it. He's excited. he's enthusiastic, so this is great. And he was really nice, he was really sweet, but he was shaking and he was sweating and he was so nervous, and I didn't want to fault him for that, which was why I gave him a second date.
Uh-oh.
So that was my first and second date, and it solidified it. And that was where I had learned about being honest is a huge priority too, right? Because I wasn't attracted to him in person, but he was so sweet and I had so much compassion for him that, we went out again.
Is this the guy that wrote the song about you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So here's my question that I have, is that it feels to me like people in general, guys and girls, and I just talk with LDS people, so I don't know if it's outside of this, but people are really slow to cross people off their list. They dread it, or they don't want to, and they leave them on longer. It feels to me like you were okay. Like that list that you just went through about had a reliable car and was able to be spontaneous and could afford a decent restaurant other than McDonald's, or, all of those. So would you really eliminate people based on any one of those criteria that didn't meet your standards? Because it feels to me like people get in this kind of cycle where they don't date a whole lot. And so they want to hang on to okay, this is a viable prospect in front of me and I don't want to eliminate him or her too quickly. But what I think caught me about your dating experience is that you did eliminate people quickly, which is exactly what Greg Bear talks about in his book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you aren't immediately comfortable with someone and if they clearly aren't comfortable with you, you can't force that. It's supposed to be like what you see in the movies. It's supposed to be that way. You're supposed to be immediately drawn, comfortable. You're supposed to close the restaurant down, close the bar down. You're supposed to talk through the night and not get enough, right? And you're supposed to go through that lust, but also it's deeper than that, and that's kind of, I wasn't gonna settle, and that was what I made sure of. I had spent the last 10 years of my life in a relationship that was never supposed to last, and it was hard enough to break up my family like that and to make that kind of decision, and I wasn't about to bring someone new into my life that I wasn't confident was gonna work, that I was 100% comfortable with.
So Tera, but how do you get the confidence to, this guy in front of you is 70, 80, 85% of what you want.
Right.
And how do you avoid the trap that I think a lot of people do, which is, hey, they're 80%, I'll change them the other 20%. I can work on that, or it's not what they would have had as a deal breaker before. Now they're like, well, but he's so good looking, or he's so this or that. I can excuse that last 20%. And it sounds like you didn't. So how do you get the confidence to not?
I mean, I guess just like I said, with the whole ending a marriage thing for so many years, I did have a longer relationship. It was like a 3-week thing. But it was an 80% thing for sure. And I thought that it had a lot of potential. But as soon as it was clear that he was nervous about combining families, then it's like, no. If there is any question, if there's any doubt, I'm not about to waste my time or their time. That's key, right? I want all or nothing at that point.
Yeah, but so here's what I think goes through people's head. If I let go of this one, I might not get anything better.
Right. No, I hear you. Absolutely. But again, that's settling. And at this point with 2 kids, I'm not willing to do that. And
so what are your top 5 characteristics, personality traits, character things that helped you get to finding Mark? What are things that with intentional dating and getting to know, you said you were able to know very quickly. So what were those things that when you were on those first dates that you were able to recognize that made you go, okay, this guy is different?
With Mark, it was everything that interests me, like the top of my list, like I was saying, with plant identification classes and the things that stimulate me and excite me. He was engaged and there was great eye contact, and we just didn't stop talking, and I didn't want to stop talking, and I wanted to kiss him. Like that was a big thing too. I hadn't been on a date where like I really wanted to just reach over and make out with him, and I think that's really important.
Right.
Just to get the engagement, the intellectualism, having similar differences, yet the conversation that's stimulating is one that's also going to kind of challenge you in a respectful way, right? Like not something that's like condescending in any way. And I really appreciate that. And it's uplifting, and being able to maintain that back and forth, right? Where, I say something, you respond, and then that stimulates more response from me too. And it just keeps going, right? Like that's really important. And I think it doesn't matter what your interests are. That's how every relationship needs to be.
So in Greg Bear's book, Real Love and Dating, he talks about finding someone that is honest or willing to tell you their truth, and someone that's willing to learn to love you unconditionally. Is that something that, even though you hadn't read the book per se, those were things that you were able to see in Mark that you maybe hadn't seen in a lot of other men, and that was something that you did find with Mark, or maybe you didn't have those exact words, but it was something that was important to you?
Absolutely. Truth is, yeah, definitely. I think body language is a big thing, and like whether you have read up on what it all means or not, I think as far as chemistry goes, you just kind of know. Making eye contact during conversation, leaning in to the person, like that speaks volumes. And with that kind of engagement, there's an honesty to it, right? Like you can't lie your way through that. So absolutely, yeah. And that helps me feel comfortable. And I know that he's comfortable because he is so engaged, right? It's kind of where I was at with it.
So I got a quick question. I think you and I might have even talked about this before. It sounds like Mark was, a head and shoulders above other people that you dated in engagement and things that you were looking for. But what if he was your first or second date? Like, would you have known, or did it take those 30 plus dates in order for you to really recognize, holy smokes, this is exactly what I'm looking for? Like, what if he was your second date?
I can't really answer that specifically because that's not how it worked for me. But with him, I was his first. He didn't date anyone before or after me, and he was persistent, and his experience was a lot of flaky women that wouldn't commit to going on a date. Like they just wanted to chat up for a while. And I had noticed with conversation with him that he was spontaneous and adventurous, and he wanted to explore places that he hasn't been before, and he wasn't very familiar with Olympia, so he made the trek from the Portland area up here on a couple of different occasions. And so I just found that to be intriguing. I was also mentally in a place where I was starting to get tired of the dating thing. I had been doing so many so quickly that I was like, ugh. So but I also have the integrity where I don't want to just do a quick little thing. Like if it's, I can schedule to have coffee or a drink with him, but if it goes well, I also want to be able to stay. So when I had made plans with a group of friends and he was like, hey, I'm going to be in the area. Do you have some time for me? I was just like, gosh, you know, I don't. I have plans that night. So I'm just going to, you know, put it off again. And, you know, we had a set date scheduled, but you know, that an opportunity had arisen and I was kind of blowing it off just because if there was potential, I didn't want to have to go, you know? So there was the hope there, but then there was also the, I'm so tired, you know, like I'm just going to hang out with my friends now. And I'm not so driven to be in a committed relationship. I just want to be, I'm so tired of the interview, right? It's
Well, yeah,
exhausting.
I see that. I mean, there's been a couple comments recently on some of the Facebook groups about dating burnout and just, you know, people who it sounds like in similar situations. It's mainly women who've been on a ton of dates and are like, you know, they're tired of it. Was there ever a time that you thought, well, I can just be single? This is fun meeting new people, or were you like really set on being in a more serious relationship?
Well, I was set on being in a serious relationship, but I also knew that it was something that you can't rush. And even though I had hit it hard and I, you know, scheduled it to be very aggressive in the beginning, yeah, that kind of exposure and, you know, that energy to put into interviewing people so much so quickly, it's draining. So you have to definitely do a lot of self-care at the same time. And so being able to manage that and maintain it, um, I, luckily I didn't have to do a whole lot, but you know, it was over what 4 months time that I had learned that. So
Cool. That's awesome. So I think you hit on a couple of these things, but basically what about Mark made you decide to step out of the dating game and just commit to him and say, this is somebody that I can see myself with for a long time?
the like-mindedness that we shared, but also enough differences that we complemented each other, and I know the family orientation, right? He was good with kids, though I hadn't introduced him to mine, but I had seen him interacting with others when we would be out in public, and that was endearing for sure. And the fact that he had already raised two kids of his own, and they are, you know, decent humans and successful in school, and that was encouraging as well. Um, he's from a different country. He has a different background as far as that goes. He's from Germany, and so I'm a huge traveler. I like to do that and learning about the different cultures, but I appreciate where he's coming from, right? Like if you're going to do something, do it right, kind of a mentality. So that was really awesome to embrace something new. And I think mentally being prepared for that when you're entering the dating scene, to like be open to different, but of course keeping it respectful and respecting yourself, respecting them, being able to do so, having the right language and communication between the two people, it's really important too.
Awesome. Okay, I appreciate that. Well, I think we're pretty much wrapping it up. One question I had is, how many second dates did you go on?
I think it was 4 or 5.
Really?
Yeah.
So out of, and I'm saying it's 43, 50 plus, I don't know, because I would also include, you know, when you talk to people, I mean, now with, you know, things like Zoom or FaceTime or even Marco Polo, I feel like you can eliminate people just by, you know, seeing them. And so even though it might not be a date, like that's another person that you tested to see and that could have ended up being a date or a, you know, a partner, but you eliminated them based on some of your stuff. So
Yeah.
but out of the whole, 40 plus dates that you went on, including this dates, that really is just 4 second dates. That's
Yeah, the speed dating, that was quite an experience. It was so much fun. I think luckily, like I said before, like being in the mental headspace of not taking it too seriously and being okay with rejection and to reject, like it's really important. But gosh, they should have it everywhere. The only place that I was able to do it was up in Seattle, but it was fascinating. Unfortunately, there wasn't like a big pool to choose from necessarily. There were 10 men there, and I think 9 women, and it was fun. It was really cool. It was exciting. And yeah, like you really get a sense of each person. Like I could be friends with any one of those people because they were just really interesting, and the fact that they were open to that kind of vulnerability for 3 minutes of conversation, like that was impressive.
But that's
Right.
all you needed is the 3 minutes, and that's both sides. It's not 3 minutes you, 3 minutes them. It's together. 3
Right.
minutes. Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, and I really like your idea about keeping it really short for the first date, just someplace quick so that you're not tying up 2 or 3 hours. So you avoided dinners, you avoided movies, you didn't do things, right,
Right.
that would take forever. So, and that was intentional. Like you wanted it to be able to maybe extend if you hit it off, which only happened 4 times for a second date or whatever.
Yeah.
But and then once really, but you wanted the ability, so that helped not maybe get as burnt out because you weren't in 30 3-hour dates. It was 30, 15, 20, half an hour. I don't know, how long did they last generally?
Yeah, it just kind of depended on how conversation went and how the feeling was and the distance that you go to do it. And yeah, I mean, going to a movie, you can't have a conversation, right? So being able to sit down, have a cup of coffee, have a cup of tea, um, maybe an appetizer, just to like kind of get a feel for somebody, like it should be enough, and you should be able to trust your own intuition on that, you know?
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll wrap it up. I appreciate you spending your time. Is there any other advice you have I mean, like there's lots of people in your situation.
Yeah,
We're
right.
trying to
I
figure this
know.
out. It's actually my most popular Zoom meetings are the ones about dating. And I don't,
Yeah.
I
Oh,
got
I
to
bet
know what
it.
I'm doing. It's not advice for me. It's just like anytime we talk about it, people are really interested.
Absolutely. And it's so stimulating. As soon as you had asked me to do this, it was just like, yeah, I want to be a part of that. That's awesome. Because it's a real life thing that everyone seems to be experiencing. I mean, I could go on and on, honestly, about all of my theories and tactics and everything, but now I'm super stimulated to write it down.
Okay. Yeah. Totally. So I'm going to put you on the spot, and I can edit this out if you don't want me to do this. But what I was thinking is that I can play some or all of it, and when people watch this, and then after they get a feel for you, maybe have them send me questions that then I could come back and ask you, and we could do another recording where you're answering
Ah,
the questions. Would you mind doing that?
that would be great. Yeah, that would be fun.
All right. Well, I'll tell people to message me their questions for Tara. So. And if you're in anywhere in the Tacoma or Olympia, Tumwater area, then she does amazing haircuts. I actually went to her because I saw a guy at work and he always had amazing hair, and I was like, hey, whoever cut your hair, I need to do the same magic on me. So we'll get you hooked up if you can be close enough to get your hair cut by Tara. She just recently started doing it in her home because of the COVID stuff, and she can't yet, but starting June 1st, it'll open up. So
Thank
hopefully,
you.
right? We're crossing our fingers that things move in that direction.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Grant.
Yeah, cool. Thanks a lot. So here, I'm
Yeah.
going to just stop the recording.